Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Summer Leadership Series. I am so excited to be back with you today. Let me know where you're checking in from. I'm coming to you on a Friday. I don't know if you're watching the replay. Let me know. Drop a comment. But we're coming to you on Friday. We're supposed to do it yesterday, but we are a little bit behind schedule. But we have a lot to cover today. I have a very simple question for you. Okay? And I don't want you to overthink it. I don't want you to overthink it. I have a very simple question. I don't want you to overthink it. I just want you to answer honestly. Can you articulate, explain, describe your school's culture? Can you explain your school culture? Very surprisingly complicated question. And that's what we're talking about today. The leadership series is continuing. The first week we talked about building fireproof systems instead of spending all of your days putting out fires. If you haven't checked out that episode, make sure you do. The second episode, we talked about instruction. Big news in instruction coming on. As people are coming on, let me know where you're coming from. Are you out of school? Hopefully by now you're out of school. Who's doing summer school? I actually feel like low-key summer school is kind of fun. Let me know if you're doing summer school. We did the last series on instruction. You might be familiar. LAUSD has implemented screen time limitations, which means our kids are going to be spending less time on computers during school. What does that mean for teachers? Some of you are thinking that's great news. It is good news, but it's going to have a lot of challenge with it because we're going to have to figure out what engagement looks like in the computer age without leaning on the computers. Computers have been an engagement crutch for a lot of us. So good news, but we have to do some thinking there. Hey, Bobby, nice to see you. So this week we're talking about culture, and I want you to actually think about this question because don't just say yes. A lot of folks cannot describe, articulate their school's culture. What I mean by that is when I ask folks like, well, what's a challenge? They'll say, oh, well, we have challenges with behavior. I'm hearing behavior more than school culture. I prefer to frame it as school culture because I think the behaviors are representative of the culture. But a lot of folks cannot describe what is your school culture. What are we doing? What is the goal here? What does it look like to be successful in the school? Since the pandemic, I've seen a severe lack of vision setting when it comes to school culture. What do I mean by that? Everyone can tell me what they don't want students to do, okay? But I'm not seeing enough of the conversation of what do we want it to look like? What do we want our buildings to look like, feel like? What does a building rooted in joy really look like? How can you break that down? How can you enumerate that into behaviors? Culture is not something that will just make itself. And when it does make itself, you're probably not going to like what it comes up with. You have to have a strong, well-articulated vision for what you want your school culture to be like. And summer is the best time to do it. If you're a school leader, you need to be thinking of that. You need to be rolling up your sleeves and enumerating that, articulating that. I want you to get out your poster paper, get out your big Sharpies, okay? And lay it all out. When I did this, when I was a school leader, but I was also a founder. So I founded a school, and we took a whole weekend away where we wrote everything down. We had sticky notes, pens. We were grappling. We were making words. We were making the vision, making the mission, all of that good work. It ended up being the foundation for what our school would become. But what I'm seeing with a lot of my partner schools that I've been partnering with, they're doing great work. And I'll ask them, okay, well, what school culture do we want? They'll say, Deanna, we want more joy. Here's what joy usually looks like. Here's the common pitfall that I see a lot of people going into. I say we want a more joyful school culture, and usually what I'll get is, oh, we're going to do more Go Noodles. Now, it's no shade to Go Noodle. I love a Go Noodle. Okay? I love a Kahoot. Don't get me wrong. Maybe Kahoot will sponsor us one day, but that is not the same thing as building a joyful school culture. If you want a school that's rooted in joy, if you want a school that's rooted in excellence, or whatever it is that you're deciding, you have to know what it looks like, not just what it doesn't look like. Because we have a lot of negative examples, but not enough examples of this is the articulated vision for what we should be seeing. Now, some of this might sound familiar to you because it is related to PBIS. The problem with PBIS is not the philosophy of PBIS. I believe the problem is in the implementation. You let me know. Do you do PBIS at your school? A lot of schools do it, and a lot of teachers, I'm sorry to say, a lot of teachers don't like it. And I think it's because it's not being done well. I'm not ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater on that yet. So I think it's so important for us to think about, what is our vision? What does a joyful school look like? That's the work that I want my leaders to be doing this summer, because when you hit the ground in August, September, you won't have the capacity and the time to do the vision work. You're going to be responding. Now, hopefully we work together so you're spending less time putting out fires and more time building fireproof systems. But you're still going to have a lot of time in your schedule where you're going to be maintaining the culture. But you need to be setting up the culture and thinking about what it looks like over the summer. I have a lot of folks, right? A lot of leaders that'll say, this teacher isn't a good fit for our school culture. But well, what is your school culture? I'm curious I don't know what it is. I'm not disagreeing that they're not a good fit, but if you don't know what that is and you haven't articulated that, how could you say that somebody's not a good fit for the school culture if you haven't named that for yourself? We have a really good question about getting teachers to buy in and having a hard time with that. Again, this is where you as a leader have to have the vision, and you can co-create it with teachers, but you have to be going somewhere. Everybody is rowing your boat in all these different directions. I'm working with an organization in the fall, and one thing that we're going to be working on is what we call one band, one sound. Okay, one band, one sound. Where are we all going? What's the plan? Where are we headed? How are we working collectively towards a broader goal? And it's not enough to just say we want our kids to do well. In this day and age, y'all, it's not enough to just say we want our students to succeed. We need a much more clear and much more well-articulated vision. Some of the things that you need to be thinking about is, how do our kids interact with each other? How do they treat each other? How do adults treat each other? What are our values? Who are we? What are we all doing here? It's not enough to just say, we're a school and we want to learn academic excellence. Unfortunately, that's just not enough anymore. You need to have something much stronger and much clearer. Now, that clarity piece is tough. It's really hard for folks, especially when you're ripping and running, you're being pulled in all these different directions. How do you take the time to step back and really think about that? That is some of the work that I said I'm doing with folks over the summer, because I believe we can start stronger if we deal with that now, as opposed to just jumping into it. Friend of mine is on here. Hey girl, was saying the interactions are key. Absolutely. I've never seen a school with a thriving student culture that has a terrible adult culture. Never, ever. The adults have to create the culture as well. And so I think what we're seeing right now in this moment is a gap in the direction, the leadership, the unity, the harmonization of one mission. And that shows up with our students too, because our kids don't know who they're supposed to be either. We have folks saying I can't believe that they're doing this at school. Instead of saying, I can't believe our students are doing these behaviors, say, have you done the work to make your building a place where those behaviors are unthinkable? I'm going to say that again. Instead of saying, I can't believe our students are doing X, Y, and Z, ask yourself, have you done the work to create a building where the culture is such that those behaviors are unthinkable? That's how you really build the systems and how you define the culture. And then it becomes helping people live and breathe that mission, as opposed to individually, one by one, trying to get people to buy in. You're already setting the tone at the beginning of the year. You're coming in hot with a clear culture and an articulated vision. A lot of people right now, this is leaders' work, but I think teachers have a role in this as well, because you're the people on the ground. You're the ones that are going to have to really live and breathe this. So if you can't answer me, if I ask you, can you tell me about your school culture? Can you define your school culture? What is your school ethos? What are your values? Where does your school stand on social emotional learning? What is your school stance on bullying versus bothering? How does your school believe kids interact with each other? How does your school believe adults interact with each other? I just asked you a lot of questions. If you can't articulate that, then we have some work to do. And I really want to empower and encourage you to think about doing that work instead of just reacting when people aren't living the vision. Well, of course they're not living the vision. We don't have a vision. We're not one band, one sound. I'm over here playing Beyonce. You're over there playing Taylor Swift. Not one band, one sound, right? We have to meet in the middle, and we have to all play the same thing. We have to all tune into the same radio station, and maybe we're all playing Ariana Grande. I don't know. Is Ariana Grande in between Beyonce and Taylor Swift? That's just kind of what popped to my mind at the time. No shade to Taylor Swift. I know she just got married. Congratulations and whatnot. So that's the kind of messaging that I want us to think about and talk about, and the conversations that we have to be having as school leaders over the summer. Now, I know my school leaders, a lot of you are 11-month or 12-month employees. So technically you're not off. You're not off. I would hate to see school leaders spending their time spinning the wheels and just, doing administrative stuff instead of doing the vision setting work that creates this alignment. Reading Bench says the language has to be aligned too. Absolutely. And again, this isn't new stuff, y'all. These are pieces and components of different frameworks that you've probably had interface with. Another problem that I discussed on a previous episode was talking about initiative fatigue. And I met up with one of my friends who's like a district level coach earlier today. And we were just talking about what makes this hard. And one of the things is the initiative fatigue. So you're hearing things that I'm saying. You're like, oh, Deanna, that sounds like PBIS. They tried to get us to do that. They tried to have us do assorted practices. Then the district said, we're doing this. We're rolling out that. District stays rolling something out. Okay. But what I'm talking about is creating and harmonizing all of these different pieces into a shared vision and mission for your school. And that is the work that has to be done. It's not enough to just have another initiative. I don't want you to be doing just another thing. I want you to be bringing all of these things together and creating a shared vision. Now, some things that their shared vision has to have. This is where you want to write something down. These are the things that your shared vision has to have. There has to be a social emotional learning component in your school culture. If your school culture programming is all consequences, it's all tier, it's all MTSS, and there's no social emotional learning, I don't see it working. Okay, I'm not going to say it will fail, but I don't think that that's going to happen. That's number one. Okay, you're writing these down, the things that you have to have, you need to be thinking about. I'm seeing a lot of what to do when things go wrong, but I'm not seeing enough naming and setting the culture. I understand it's a financial thing, but I'm seeing a lot of schools turn away from the social emotional learning work, or they're only doing it as in social emotional learning, but it's the counselor for the students that are having these huge blow-ups. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about good old-fashioned tier 1. Everybody's getting it, the nitty-gritty work. At my school, it was Second Step. Now, I'm not saying that's the only program. That's the program that I use, that I'm most familiar with. Sorry, I got some boom chicka pop over here. Second Step is the one I'm most familiar with. But if you're thinking about your school culture, okay, because remember, we opened up with saying, can you articulate and explain your school culture, yes or no? A lot of people cannot. Something that you have to have is that social emotional learning piece. Our kids are not, how many news articles do you need to see? Do we need to talk about, unpack, to see that our kids are not coming with the people skills that they need to have? Our kids are coming in not knowing how to people. And we can play, we can throw the accountability back and forth. We can play past the hockey, whatever, the hacky sack with that 1,000 times, with if it's the parents or it's us. But we're experiencing the brunt of what happens when it isn't there. So I understand we want to say that's the parent's job. And I'm not here to get into a philosophical argument with you about if it's the parent's job or not. But you do need to have a policy around how to account for that. Because see, when they go home, the parent is only dealing with that child. So the pain point lands differently with the parent, because if their kid doesn't have any people skills and doesn't know how to people, it's their problem with their child. It's our problem in our schools with 30 of them. 30 of them. Okay, so we can't really just do the whole, who's responsible thing, because we're the ones who have to deal with it. So we need that social emotional, that tier 1. We have to teach our kids how to be in community with each other. We need the social emotional learning for kids and adults. If you're a school leader, you need to be thinking about how you level set with how your adults interact with each other as well. So that's the first thing that has to be there. You do also, the second thing is you do have to have your response planned out. You have to have a behavior system. I'm not here to tell you that restorative, PBIS, whole brain teaching, whatever it is that you're going to get into, I'm not here to argue about which one is the better one, but you have to have one, and it's got to work, and you got to work it, and you got to stick to it. You have to have a plan for when things go wrong. Now, what I see a lot from schools is they bring in an MTSS or a tier system, but then you end up having most of the school in the highest tiers. That's telling you it's not working. That means that you have a tier 1 problem. So bring in a tier system, sure, but it should be a few students getting the highest and most intensive supports there. So you need to figure out social emotional learning in your school culture and what to do when things go wrong. You also need to have your vision for how your students and adults and people that are graduates carry themselves. I've been working with schools to create their graduate profiles. That's been a really helpful process, whether it's the language of a graduate profile, it's, the ethos of the student, whatever it is. Now, I know a lot of you probably have those, but my question to you is, are you using it? Yeah, are you using it? Is it living, or is it just existing on the side? If you have one, it might be time to dust that bad boy off and get back into it. Okay, think about a little bit more about what it could look like to use that really well. So those are just a few of the things that you have to have clearly articulated in your vision. If you can't answer the question, what is your school culture? Then you need to be thinking about what is the baseline social emotional learning? What do we do when things go wrong? And what is our vision for how this is supposed to work and how we interact with each other? Now, there's a lot that goes into school culture. Those are just the main 3 things that I want you to continue to think about and articulate. But all this to say, right, you need to put time and attention into this. And you'll spend the time either way. So the choice is yours. You can spend the time on the back end playing whack-a-mole and responding to behavior, or you can spend the time on the front end and do the dirty work and get your hands a little dirty and do what needs to do at the beginning of the year to lay the foundation. Okay. So if you're a school leader and you looked at your data from last year and you had a bunch of suspensions, you had a bunch of expulsions, kids were in your class or kids were in the office all the time, that tells you that you might have a culture problem. And when I work with my partnership schools, again, what we do is we articulate, what are we looking for this culture? This isn't going to solve every single problem that you have, because your high flyers, your heavy hitters are going to be outside of this realm. Okay, they're going to need more intensive support. But what this is going to do is it's going to get that lion's share, a big chunk of your kids, to be one band, one sound, rowing our boats all in the same direction, as opposed to just going every which way. Stick with me here, okay, walk with me here. One of my roommates in college was on the rowing team, right? We had a pretty good rowing team at my school. And her whole job, she was the coxswain, I think it is called. Her only job was to just get everybody on the same page, okay? Everybody's rowing, but you row faster if everybody's in lockstep with each other. Row, whatever they do. I'm not going to imitate it because I don't know exactly what they do, but I think y'all know what I'm talking about. And my friend was the person, right? She doesn't row. She was perched, she had her megaphone, and she's telling everybody what to do. That is the kind of unison and alignment that I want you to see. Now, if you're a teacher hearing this and you're like, whoa, Deanna, I'm tired of this alignment conversation. I know what's best for my kids. I want to do my own thing. Let me tell you a little bit about why I still think that this is helpful, even if you're somebody who resists right alignment, because I know alignment can be triggering, because sometimes you're doing great stuff and the district comes along and says, now we got to be aligned, and you have to move away from practices that have been working and getting results for your kids. So, but don't misunderstand me here. I'm not saying that it's one size fits all, cookie cutter, but we have to be in the same direction. We're going the same way. Okay. The destination, we're all going to the grocery store. I might walk one day with my little cart and my sun hat to get some steps in. I might drive one day to the grocery store. I might take my bike, but we're all going to the same place and we're all going to end up at the grocery store. Okay. So alignment doesn't necessarily mean that you can't choose your own adventure. If we're aligned to this vision of here's our school culture, that doesn't mean that you as a teacher have to do everything exactly the same. Because I know sometimes people hear me talking about this and they're like, what do you mean one band, one sound? I have my own little je ne sais quoi in my classroom and that works for me. Not here to block anybody's vibe with that. I think that's extremely important and extremely powerful, especially once you really get it, you've been doing it for a few years and you really know what you're doing. But you can still be rowing in the same direction with that well-articulated school culture. And if you have a good leader, they'll have room for you to do it in a way that fits your vision. A good school leader will be able to say, hey, this is who we are as a team, and you can kind of make it look like whatever you want it to look like in your classroom. But if you are, the summer, I hate to say it, the summer is dwindling. They are putting back to school supplies up at Target already. So we're coming to a close. I need you to be thinking about this. If you're a school leader, if you're someone watching this, you're not a school leader, send this to them. Be like, hey, have we talked about our culture? Do we have a well-articulated vision and culture for this year? A lot of what I do, again, comes back to planning. And I promise you this, if you spend the time planning right now, you'll get that time back later in the year. But too many of our schools are going in without a clear map of what is our school culture. Or they're reducing school culture to coupons, to Fun Friday. School culture is just, we have assemblies. That's not a school culture vision. A school culture, remember those 3 things that we talked about, has a social emotional element, has a well-articulated plan and vision for holding people accountable to fitting into the school culture, and has a very clear vision of what it is when done well. It's articulated. You can describe it. You can see what it looks like, what it sounds like. You know your look-fors. That is including adults and students as well. Again, you can't pour all this time into the student culture and then the students hear the adults talking to each other disrespectfully. And then you're going to say you're suspended for disrespect. Huh? Not going to work. Not going to work. The adult culture has to be there as well. Why is this so important, the social emotional element, and why are we talking about this right now? There has never been a time where our students are coming to our rooms from more divided perspectives and with more harmful and dangerous ideas about what it means to be in community with each other. If you're watching this in the United States, we have just completely lost the plot on community, on working together, on collectiveness. And so as a teacher, you are negotiating and navigating all of this. I mean, it's no surprise. I work with a lot of schools as well that have had an absolute surge, a terrifying surge in hate crimes, hate speech, etc. And what I ask them every time is, okay, well, what is in your school culture that makes it clear to students that this isn't a place for hate speech? And I don't mean just a poster that says hate speech has no home here. That's not enough. That's not enough. You don't have a well-articulated culture, so students don't know that that kind of thing can't fly there. That tells me more about the culture than it does about the student. So we're dealing with this time where our kids are having these issues, and our teachers, and this is no shade on the teachers, you're just not equipped to deal with it. Some of you are, if you're watching this, but I doubt that most of us got the training that we really need to know how to navigate a time like this. That is why the culture is so important, because kids are just coming in with all kinds of crazy ideas. They're disrespectful they don't respect themselves. Hello. These children do not respect themselves. They don't respect their bodies. And we want them to respect each other. Like, come on, it's not going to happen. So we have to really be clear in setting the tone. You have to set the tone for what you want your kids to be behaving like when they come into the school building. And that's the work that I do with folks, is figuring that out over the summer so that you can start really strong, just straight out the gate. And so if you're somebody that you've been doing this work and you're like, Deanna, I feel like I'm joyful, I want to have a joyful classroom, but your joy hasn't extended into strategies. It's just, again, adding a Go Noodle or a Kahoot at the end of the assessment. That's not gonna be what gets you to that next level of a joyful classroom. And this is a lot of the work that I was doing. I did a 4-week-long professional development with teachers in Vermont 2 weeks ago. And we talked about joy as a practice, as opposed to just an idea. Because people hear oh, Deanna does work with joy, she's just going to help us, make the room more cutesy and da-da-da. No. No, ma'am. We're doing joy strategy work around here, and we're building cultures that are rooted in joy and academic experiences that are rooted in joy. That's what we're working on. So I want you all to continue to think about how you would explain the culture that you have right now. What do you have right now? Is it clear? Is it well articulated? And if it's not, what does it mean to really do the work of planning it out and clarifying it? And until we do this, and I don't want to sound negative, but until we do this, we're going to continue to see the surge in hate with our students, all the challenges, the burnout, because we're not doing the work of course correcting. We're just responding and then acting shocked when our students don't respect themselves. How are they respecting each other? And bonus points, what does respect mean? If I say respect, everybody watching this will have a different definition of respect. Every single person. And that's part of the challenge. You have to name and norm and get really clear on this. Again, this should sound familiar. This should sound like some of the PBS work. And I think all of it works. Like, I'm not somebody who, I know a lot of people have beef with PBS, have beef with restorative practices. I've seen all of these things work. It's just about how you make it actually live and implementable, as opposed to just getting reduced to tokens. And then restorative practice just becomes having a conversation with the student after they've torn up your classroom. That's not what it is. That's not what they intended when they came up with these things. So that is what today's whole focus is about. Your homework is this. Answer this question. What is your school culture? How would you define it? How do kids interact with each other? How do adults interact with each other? And if and when you find that you don't have a clearly articulated vision for that, the 3 things you have to make sure that you think about as a starting point. This is where you start. This isn't where you finish. You start with the social emotional learning, what to do when things go wrong, and also having that shared vision that people can buy into to know what it looks like when it's done well. That's the 3 places that you start. Again, if you're not a school leader, this is still work that you can do for your classroom, but don't be shy. Send this to your school leader and say, hey, have we talked about this yet? What's our plan with school culture? Too many of us are leaving the culture to define itself and to emerge. Then we end up going in different directions. Remember the vision of the rowing team. We're all rowing our boats together in the same direction. Like I said, one of the schools I'm working with this year, our whole theme is one band, one sound. How can we make it one band, one sound going in the same direction? That's the type of visionary leadership that I hope to build and to continue to work with you all on. If you have any questions, please let me know. I hope you're enjoying your summer. If you're watching the replay, make sure you hit me up and let me know you're watching the replay. We will be back next week. This is an ongoing series. Basically, all the things that I learned and that I do with my leaders, I'm boiling it down and giving it to you because I want more helpful schools. So many schools are struggling right now, and our kids need support quickly. We don't have time to waste or to wait. So make sure you tune back in to the next one. If you are a member of the newsletter gang, you're getting all of this plus more tips all summer long, strategies. I also have a principal summer blueprint guide that is very helpful, that walks you through every single thing that I'm talking about. Every single thing I'm talking about, I wrote it all down, and I have a blueprint guide, and that's what I give people, and I'm like, here, do this summer, and they just get it done. So if that's something that you're interested in, as long as you are in the newsletter gang, as long as you're signed up, and you can find the place to sign up on my profile, you'll be getting all of that good stuff. Again, if you're a teacher, just change it for your classroom and then send it to your school leader. Okay. If you're a teacher that's doing the thing and you're thriving, wouldn't it be cool if all the other classrooms in your building were also thriving? So let's help each other out a little bit here. But yeah, y'all, I'm so glad to be back here with you all doing lives. Let me know. Send me a DM if you were in the original OG Friday live gang. I used to go live every single Friday during the pandemic and talk about education. It was amazing. I haven't done it in a while, but let me know if you're part of the OG gang. We're going to continue this series throughout the summer, talking about all of these important topics. If you have questions or you're like, I don't know how this applies to me, or blah, 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 shoot me a DM and make sure you're checking the stories, because every day I'm sharing resources on stories over there. All right, y'all, we are not letting this be another year where the school culture builds itself. This year has to be our most joyful year yet. We are building classroom cultures and school cultures that are rooted in joy. Okay, this is a movement. Hope you're with me and ready to do this work. I'm so excited to be here along this journey with y'all. Happy Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. And remember, I'm rooting for you.